Hi everyone, this is Surf. Hope you're doing well. Before I go on, all praise and glory goes to the Most High Prime Creator forever ever. I wanted to share some informations, very deep ones, important ones, and I think too many people still neglect these things. And I hope by connecting you few dots you will rise further and understand more, my brothers and sisters. I will start with, and we will stay on parasites today, the enemy within. Satan means adversary. This is as well a Satan. Let's go about in general information about parasite. A parasite is an organism that lives on or in a host organism and gets its food from or at the expense of its host. There are three main classes of parasites that can cause disease in humans: protozoa, helminths, and ectoparasites. Now let's go back. Sorry. Did you ever see parasites in microscope? Now get ready. Boom. Look at this creature. Now pause the image, or you can do it by yourself using, I'll just show you a few, let it go a few seconds so it sinks in. Don't this look like a dragon, a worm? Worms in the Bible, dragons as well. Let me show you a few more. Monsters and Company, nightmare stuff, right? Good, I hope I caught your attention. Now, a little bit later, I will let you hear and see a video about parasites to get you more drops about it, so you hear it from someone else as well, connecting you several dots together. But you need to know that they have taken away several books out of the so-called Bible, and that there is, amongst the so-called apocrypha texts, there are so-called Gospels where you see Joshua and some other prophets speaking about not eating meat. Meat is just another word for a corpse, for a dead body. Meat is a corpse. It's dead. And it don't give us nothing. And the hijackers, the parasites, the demons, and all the others together, they use mind control, and they flipped everything to make us eat so much meat, telling us that it gives us proteins. But when we speak of proteins, under the microscope you see it's a hoax. But let's take a look at a freaking gorilla. You see all these muscles, and if you go and see what they eat, you will see it's mostly vegetarian diets. If we want to see another animal that is strong, a bull, there is nothing stronger like a bull on 4 feet, on 4 foot. They are vegetarians. Look at the muscles and at the textures of the muscles. Who else? Elephants. When they tell you there is no proteins in the plants, it's all just a big freaking lie from the devils. Now, even if we go to Genesis 1:29, let's go inside here. Now it says, and the Most High said, Behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed, which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in the which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed, to you shall be for meat. So our meat should be vegetables. And a few verses before that, the Most High gives us dominion over everything. But dominion don't mean killing and eating animals. We were there to take care of them. Animals, anima Latin means soul. These creatures are our brothers and sisters. And once we, all these parties with barbecue on these holidays, it's incense for the devils. They love the smell of the roasting meat. The Nephilim started with that, and the fallen ones. We did take care of our garden. And if somebody tells you being vegetarian is a devil's doctrine, you should really ask yourself if his spirit is right, because he has definitely a parasite that is protecting his rights to eat meat, to survive. And we don't clean our temple and are blocking ourselves, our rising, from in ether, in everything, on all sides. I'm just trying to give you drops and help, and you have more spiritual discernment as well, because you can filter out the words from all these people, because you don't trust no man, you trust the Most High, and you seek His face and His commandments. There is this wild thing as well, if you go to the Essene Gospel. Give me a second, please. Now, if you go to the Gospel of the Holy 12, which is an apocrypha that has been taken out, the prophet speaks, this righteous teacher speaks of, let us find us, so we, please be patient, bear with me. Maybe I have it here already. There it is. Now it's 46, and let's scroll down, and now you will hear it's where he gives the laws, the instructions. Now check this out. It's 46. There it goes. And the prophet said to them, Behold, a new law I give unto you, which is not new, but old. And let's go further down. For who are the Yasharal of the Most High? Even they of every nation and tribe who work righteousness, love mercy, and keep my commandments, instructions. These are the true Yasharal of the Most High. And standing upon his feet, the prophet spoke, Hear, O Yasharal, the Most High God is one. Many are my seers and my prophets. In me all live and move and have subsistence. You shall not take away the life of any creature for your pleasure, nor for your profit, nor yet torment it. You shall not steal the goods of any, nor gather lands and riches to yourselves, beyond your need or use. You shall not eat the flesh, nor drink the blood of any slaughtered creature, nor yet anything which bringeth disorder to your health or senses. Okay, and he goes on, but pay attention to this one, because the topic is parasites and meat, and a distorted, book, which was made by the hijackers. So he tells us not to eat flesh, and in this apocrypha, which is called the Gospel of the Holy 12, which you can find for yourself, you can read and filter out the goodness, the truth of it. We are spiritual beings. Now done this, let's go back to the parasites, because if we go to YouTube, I prepared a video for you, which you should definitely pay attention now. You will learn a lot of stuff, and you can put the things together again with parasites and the enemy within. By fasting, we clean up, and by stopping eating dead stuff, Let's go.
really exciting to be here. And by here I mean the stage, because it's warm. Bad luck to all of you. Okay. Does anyone remember sea monkeys? Oh, right, okay, loads of you. Yeah, these little things, you got eggs, you put them in a water bowl, and they would hatch into these little shrimp-like things.
The science knows about parasites that we have, and they give us cocktails to cultivate them, They give us pains and they eat us slowly up, and they do mind control us, like I said. I don't remember if I said it before. If you're sitting, those times you sit at a table and you have someone that wants to take a piece from you in your dish and you get angry. It happens so many times to people that they change their humor due to the food they want to eat. It's not you, it's the parasite.
Yeah, so you remember them. I am now going to ruin sea monkeys for you. Sea monkeys are a brand name. They're actually a thing called brine shrimps, or Artemia, and they look like this. They swim around as individuals usually, but they can also form these really large shoals. A single brine shrimp is about 1 centimeter long, but these shoals can extend for meters. So the question I want to ask you now is, why do they do this? What's the advantage for them in gathering in large groups? Well, lots of animals form large groups. We've got zebra herds and starling flocks and fish shoals. And the usual explanation is that they're getting safety in numbers, right? So as a group, any single individual is less likely to get eaten if a predator attacks. But that's not what's happening here. In fact, the exact opposite is happening here. Because Artemia gets attacked by a tapeworm, a parasite that lives inside them and drains the nutrients from their guts. This isn't the exact tapeworm that affects the shrimp, but since you're going to have to look at this thing for the next minute or so, I went for the least revolting picture of a tapeworm that I could find, which was really hard.
Pay attention.
So, when the tapeworm gets inside one of the little sea monkeys, it does 5 things. It castrates them, thanks. It makes them live longer. The castration bit is the least interesting bit here, so we'll get that out of the way. It makes them live longer. It changes their color, so they go from transparent to bright red. It makes them swim quite close to the surface of the water, and it makes them gather in large groups. So the grouping shrimp are much more likely to carry a tapeworm inside them than the ones that are swimming solo. Why does it do that? Because, like many parasites, the tapeworm has a very complicated life cycle that involves hopping between lots of different hosts. And the shrimps are just an intermediary. The final host, the only one in which this thing can reproduce and create the next generation of tapeworms, is the flamingo. This wasn't planned, but this stage is about to get a lot more sinister in about 5 minutes. There are also eggs in this talk, bad eggs. Okay, so the flamingo is the final host. So if the tapeworm gets into the shrimp, it needs somehow to get into the flamingo. And it does that by changing the body and the behavior of the host it's currently in, the shrimp, by making them more conspicuous, by making them swim closer to the surface of the water, and by making them gather in these large, really obvious to see groups. The tapeworm ensures that its shrimp is more likely to get eaten by a flamingo. So it's in keeping with the theme of tonight's talk, tonight's event. The shrimp's reality has been completely overwritten by this parasite that lives inside it. That is the secret of the Artemia swarm. It's not safety in numbers, it's danger in numbers. And this sort of thing happens all the time in nature. It's incredibly sinister and unsettling stuff. This idea that these hidden, unseen forces could be living inside creatures and controlling their minds and their behavior. When we think about animal behavior, we make this really big assumption, which is that the animals themselves are in charge of their actions, that they're in control. And as this example tells us, that's often not the case. And you know, if some of you are a bit freaked out by this concept, then that's perfectly natural. A lot of our best fiction, a lot of our sci-fi revolves around horrendous tales of mind control and puppet mastery. We rail at the idea that some nanny state might be telling us what to do. We find it very disconcerting, the prospect that organizations might be controlling our efforts. But this sort of thing happens all the time in nature. For our team here, when it gets infected by a tapeworm, it's effectively, the shrimp is effectively not a shrimp anymore. All it is a vehicle for getting the tapeworm into the flamingo. Now, I've been writing about mind-controlling parasites for many years now after I read a book called Parasite Rex by a really good science writer called Carl Zimmer. You should all read it if you haven't already. And once you start learning about these things, you see them all over the place. And there are so many great stories. This tapeworm example only came out about a month ago. So let me just run through a couple of my other favorites. This caterpillar is kind of thrashing about manically, and the little insect that was running up the branch is now crawling away, looking a little bit bemused. And you can't see it anymore, that's annoying. Okay, let's watch it again. If you look at what's on the branch next to it, there are these little white cocoons. So is the caterpillar guarding its own cocoons? Well, not really. This thing is a zombie caterpillar, and those are the cocoons of the thing that killed it. Because a while back, the caterpillar got attacked by a parasitic wasp that laid eggs inside it, about 80 eggs. The eggs hatched into little larval wasps that started eating the caterpillar alive before eventually bursting out and spinning the cocoon. So it's a bit like Alien, right? You know, John Hurt with the chest burster, but like 80 of them. Now, somehow, the caterpillar doesn't die. What happens is that it becomes a bodyguard for the wasp cocoons. It just stays there, it doesn't eat, it doesn't move, it just violently headbangs whenever something comes near. And its reality too has been completely overwritten. It looks like what happens is that there are a couple of the wasp grubs that stay behind in the caterpillar and somehow control what is basically its corpse now, to make it defend its siblings. Here is another example. I was hoping to be able to pause this video before. Okay, this is a suicidal cricket. It's about to jump into this pond and it will drown. Now,
Don't this equate to possession as well, my brothers and sisters?
I was hoping to pause it, but you're not going to get a choice. This is what killed the cricket. This is a Gordian worm, or a horsehair worm. It's been growing inside the cricket, growing really quite big. Yeah, really quite big. Sorry. Yeah. The worm's been growing inside the cricket, but it needs just play it on loop for the rest of the night. Bye. The worm grows big inside the cricket, as you saw, but to reproduce, it needs to get into water. And it does that by releasing proteins which basically derange the cricket's brain so that it starts behaving really erratically. And whenever it gets near water, in this case a swimming pool, maybe a pond or a lake, it'll just jump in and the worm can wriggle out and create more worms. One more example. Some of you may prefer this one because everyone hates cockroaches. And this one is about to have a really bad day because that is Ampulex compressor, the emerald cockroach wasp. What I think is a very beautiful insect that just happens to feed its young on live cockroaches. When it meets a cockroach, it stings it in the brain. The wasp venom doesn't kill the cockroach, it merely stupefies it enough that the wasp can grab it by its antennae and walk it back to its burrow like a dog on a leash. Once there, the roach gets buried, the wasp lays an egg, and yes, you've guessed it, larvae burrows into the roach, eats it, eventually comes out as a wasp. And actually, just last month, the scientists who've been working on this discovered that so dirty is the cockroach that the little wasp larva kind of slathers about this antibacterial spit to just clean its larder stroke nursery. And they discovered this by installing a little transparent window in the side of one of these parasitized roaches, which is one of those experiments that just makes me think, what were your dinner conversations like that night? Like, hey, how was your day at work? I went to loads of meetings. Well, I installed a little plastic window in a roach. Okay, so all these examples have this theme of parasites controlling the host. So the cricket becomes suicidal, the worm becomes a zombie bodyguard, the roach becomes basically a dog on a leash. And when you start learning about these things, you start wondering if all kind of weird examples of animal behavior are actually the work of really gross mind-controlling parasites. And you'd probably be right. These, as I said, these things are everywhere. And just in case any of you were thinking of sleeping tonight, they're not niche parts of the world around us that we can kind of ignore. Actually, they are everywhere. A group of scientists looked at this Californian estuary, so a river system, and basically dissected and weighed everything that they could find, and found that the total mass of all the parasites was the same as all the fish around. So these are tiny little worm-like things, but there are so many of them that they equal the fish in weight, and were about 3 times as heavy as all the birds. So there's loads of them. They're incredibly important. I've shown you a lot of insects tonight. By far, the vast majority of animal species are insects, and around 10% of insects are parasites of other insects. You can also get these crazy, like Russian doll type parasites. So this is a wasp called Lysibia nana. This parasite specializes in laying its eggs on other wasps that lay their eggs on other insects. The technical term is a hyperparasite, but basically it's like parasite inception. Yeah, and these things are really revolting, right? Firstly, being eaten alive is not fun and games, and having your mind control is a bit sinister. But I think there are 2 other reasons specifically why these things are so disconcerting. One, they are incredibly specific in what they do. So let's go back to the wasp. As I said, the wasp doesn't kill the cockroach. Its venom doesn't paralyze it. It is a highly specific chemical weapon. All it does is destroy the cockroach's motivation to walk. Otherwise, it's a completely normal roach. If you flip it on its back, it will flip the right way up. If you put it in water, it will swim away. The only thing it won't do is walk away from the thing that's going to lay eggs on its body. Here's another example. This is a thing called Toxoplasma gondii. It's a parasite that infects all sorts of mammals, so humans, cats, rats. Cats are the important host. They're the one it needs to get into in order to reproduce. But it often gets into rats. So if it gets into rats, it needs to somehow get into cats. If a rat without toxo smells cat urine, it runs in the sensible direction, which is away. If a toxo-infected cat smells cat urine, it runs towards, straight into the jaws of death. And toxo is so subtle that if you took an infected rat, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. It might be a little bit more active, it'll be a little bit less fearful of open spaces, but it'll have this bizarre attraction towards cat urine. And the parasite is so specific that the rat will still be afraid of dog piss, it will still run away if it smells that. It's only the smell of cat piss that makes it behave strangely. And how is that even possible? The answer is really, we don't know. We know that toxo releases a chemical that makes more dopamine in the brain. Dopamine is a brain chemical involved in reward and motivation. We know that the parasite specifically affects parts of the brain involved in things like sexual arousal. So it's possible that in this rat, this innate fear of cats has been replaced with something a little bit like lust. But otherwise, it's really bizarre. None of that explains why it's sensitive to dog urine, but not cat urine. And that brings me to the other really disconcerting thing about mind-controlling parasites, which is that they are often incredibly simple creatures that are infecting the behavior of things that are much more complex than they are. So remember the tapeworm at the start. A tapeworm is basically a long intestine with a mouth at one end and some genitals. And it's controlling a shrimp. Which is sort of much more complicated than it is. Toxo is even more ridiculous. Toxo is a single cell, and it's infecting the brain of a rat, a mammal brain. That's not that far off to it controlling the brain of a human. Like, sure, we are more intelligent than a rat, we have bigger brains, but it's basically the same structures, the same types of cells, the same chemicals. And yeah, the same parasites. There is some evidence that toxo affects human behavior as well. For a start, it's really common. So estimates vary from study to study, country to country. The French seem to have a lot of it.
I hope you paid attention. He filtered it out, but this goes on a large scale everywhere, and they know about it. And I want you to understand, I'm not judging anyone. I'm just trying to lead you to the water. You know, not eating meat has only benefits. You cannot say it's demonic, you know, to be a vegetarian. There is something wrong with that statement. If you know what I mean, put one on one together, you know, and different kind of parasites on larger scale, you know, insectoids, and so many demonic figures, you know, even in these drawings and wherever, have as well insectoid features. This shit is crazy.
Reason, but it seems that if you take the global population, about 1 in 3 people are toxo carriers. Just look around the room right now. I'm seeing hundreds of smiley toxo-infested faces. Now, for the most part, nothing happens. Like the rat, you can't tell. In very rare cases where people have weakened immune systems, you get a disease called toxoplasmosis, which is bad news. But again, for the most part, the parasite just holes up in the brain in these dormant cysts and does nothing. Or does it? We know from that, there have been a few studies suggesting that people who carry toxo answer personality questionnaires differently. They seem to be more likely to get into car accidents. And there's some really tantalizing evidence that people with schizophrenia are more likely to have this thing in their heads than people who don't. Now, firstly, don't panic, because as I said, this is quite common. Schizophrenia is very rare, so even if it's doing something, it's not doing it all the time. And also, these studies are quite inconclusive, but just think about everything that I've told you tonight about how sophisticated the manipulations of parasites can be and how common they are, how common toxo is. It really wouldn't surprise me if these things were also influencing our behavior and maybe even shaping the course of human culture because they're so common.
What did he say?
Surprise me if these things were also influencing our behavior and maybe even shaping the course of human culture because
shaping the course of human culture. I will get
it's so common. I think this is the thing about parasites. They can seem really, really terrifying, and especially for us because we place so much importance on our independence and our sense of free will, that this concept that things could be manipulating us is really disconcerting. And yet, it's not a niche part of nature, it's a very core part of the world around us. And I think the more we find out about them, the more interesting they become. And regardless of whether toxo is affecting our behavior or not, I think the one thing...
The hijacks, you know, they like this kind of shit.
Parasites definitely do is fascinate and intrigue us. And I hope that after this talk you agree.
So I hope you paid attention. A few more things. As we learned today, you know, Gospel of the Holy 12, Rejected Scriptures, it's an Essene book. And, you know, we've seen that in Genesis we have an old commandment about yielding trees, fruits, vegetables, you know, for us. So it is not a new thing brought up, but it's something old. It's among the first commandments, you know, on the first page. So do your math, do your research, get yourself self-approved, And now the interesting thing is as well, there are frequencies, that kill parasites, like frequencies, kill parasites. So you will find a lot of stuff about frequency killing parasites, music, sound, vibration. So if you think of the hijack mind that's now in charge as well, they need artificial vibration, the so-called 440 hertz as well. This is a hijack vibration since the 1950s. They changed all instruments, and this vibration is harming our DNA. 432 drop radio has brought up a lot of stuff. You can dig on their channel about that. So if we come back to the natural vibration, the 432 hertz is within the Schumann resonance, within the natural vibration. These parasites would probably maybe die off as well. It's natural vibration, being natural, coming back to the codes. Commandments are there to guard us, protect us, and help us. All praise and glory to the Most High, Prime Creator, forever, ever. I hope these informations will be useful to you in your growth. Be safe. Good rising, everyone.